welcome to Pies Around the House. In this video I'm going to show you how to dot and dab plasterboard to a wall. Now usually you'd be doing this with large rectangular sheets of plasterboard, but in my particular example I'm filling a gap on a wall above the staircase to my loft conversion. I've already cut the piece of plasterboard to size, and slightly different again, the top here is going to be lining up with this piece of plasterboard on a stud timber frame. So this will give me the line at the top. We'll be putting the screws through into the timber and using the dot and dab to level out the board below on this wall, which is actually not in line, it's set back from this wall here. Now ideally when you apply your adhesive you want it in continuous vertical lines, and you want those lines spaced at about 400mm apart. So to ensure I do that correctly, I'm just going to mark out 400mm on this piece of plasterboard above, then I know to continue my lines of adhesive down below each mark. And another thing to note is if you're compliant to building regulations, then you want to put a continuous line of adhesive across the top of your ceiling as well. In this example, mine's going to be by here. So the materials and tools you're going to need for the job are your bag of plasterboard adhesive, a bucket of water to mix your adhesive, a bucket of water to clean your tools, a trowel and a hawk to apply the adhesive to the wall, a power drill and a paddle mixer to mix the adhesive, a bucket trowel for getting the adhesive out of your bucket, and a brush again to clean down your tools. Now although I'm mixing the adhesive with a drill, you've got to be careful not to spin it too fast. You've got to keep it at quite low revolutions. Alternatively, if you're not mixing much, you can just use the bucket trowel and mix this by hand. Now the ratios is about 2 parts adhesive to 1 part water, and it will tell you the instructions on the particular bag of adhesive that you buy. So I've already got the water in my bucket. I'm just going to slowly add the adhesive to the bucket, let it settle for a few minutes, and then we'll start to mix it. So by leaving that just for a couple of minutes, it'll soak in, you can hear all those air bubbles getting in. And something else I should note, which I haven't done, is you should ideally wear a face mask with this because it is a fine powder and it's not ideal for your lungs. So once you've left it a few minutes, just give it a quick stir with your bucket trowel, and if it feels a bit too wet, just add a little bit more and then start to give it a mix. Although you add the adhesive to the water, if it feels like you've got a bit too much adhesive, don't be afraid just to add a drop of water to wet it up as you're mixing it. Now it would have been a good idea to get a new mixer for this, wouldn't it? Because mine's just broken and now I'm going to tape it up with some tape again to make sure that it's working. So you can see I'm having a nightmare. I've tried taping this up, it's not working, so I'm going to have to mix this by hand. Just as well, I didn't have more boards to do. So let this be a lesson about having the right tools and being prepared. But I think I might actually get away with this. I added a little bit more water, wet it up, and now it seems to be mixing nicely, so I'm going to get it on the wall in a second. And once you've mixed your adhesive, you want to try and get it on the wall as soon as possible, and then once it's on the wall, they say you've got up to about 50 minutes before it goes off, but ideally, once you've mixed that, you want to get it on the wall and probably try and get your plasterboard in the place you want, from my experience, in about 15 to 20 minutes. Any more than that and you're going to have real trouble shifting it around. Don't forget, the hotter it is, the quicker it dries. Just give your hawk a quick clean. And just try to dry off the excess like that before you put your adhesive on. Then just scoop the adhesive on your hawk like that. And then using your trowel, you can just apply it to the wall.
You'll notice by here that I'm doing continuous rows of adhesive Now, hence the name dot and dab. You would usually see this in dots or dabs down the wall with spaces between them, but because of the small nature of this bit of wall, I'm just doing continuous rows. Again, when you look at it, it's not the neatest. I mean, you're not going to see it anyway, so it doesn't matter. And the other thing to point out is quite often people do large blobs of adhesive. One reason I don't like doing this, first of all, is that you just waste space. The more you put on, the more the plasterboard eats into the space of your room. But secondly, in this particular situation, I've got to keep them thin because this piece of plasterboard needs to line up with the one above. If I put it on too thick, I'll never be able to push it up to the other one, and then it'll sit proud and it's not going to sit flush with the other bit of plasterboard. And obviously, I want this to be one long continuous wall from top to bottom. And here you'll notice I'm starting a continuous row of plasterboard adhesive across the top of the wall. And this is what I mentioned earlier, is to do with fire safety regulations. This creates a fire stop, so in the event of a fire downstairs, if the fire were to creep up behind the plasterboard and around the dot and dab, then it would hit this plasterboard adhesive, this continuous row, and it would prevent it from getting up into the loft room upstairs.
What was that now?
So that noise you just heard was my daughter falling off a stool, and as you can imagine, she started to make one hell of a racket. So from this point onwards, I've turned the volume off for a few minutes. Now on with my explanation. Here I'm just adding a few more bits of plasterboard adhesive to the wall. There's the row across the bottom which will help stabilise the plasterboard, stop it flapping around, and it creates another fire stop. And then there are a few extra bits I got there because I had a surplus bit of plasterboard adhesive in the bucket which I just wanted to use up, to be honest, save throwing it away. Then I just pushed the cut piece of plasterboard into place using my hands and the spirit level, pushed it up and bonded it to the adhesive behind, creating the adhesion between the board and the wall, and then going back over with the spirit level, just checking the wall is plumb and flush with the other piece of plasterboard.
So you can see now the screws have gone in. I've pushed this piece of plasterboard level with this one. Then I've been pushing this one in by hand and using the level just to make sure that the wall is all plumb. The other thing in this example is I'm trying to make sure I get an even width of timber on the stairs all the way down. So just looking at the wall from the bottom, you can see now how it nicely lines up with the piece of plasterboard at the top. And you'll see as we go down the stairs, this even width of timber I was talking about. So as we come down here, all looks nice and even right to the bottom. There's a good example of how you can use dot and dab in conjunction with a stud timber just to line different walls up with other walls and whatnot. As you can see now that that wall is lovely and plumb, and by the time it's plastered, scrim taped, flattened out, we'll have a lovely plumb wall from bottom to top. So if you found that video useful, then please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for regular notifications. I've been Pous Around the House. Ta-ta, farewell.